anything about politics. This is the show where you can ask me anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all your questions about politics, and no one's going to judge you or tease you or make fun of you for any kind of question that you might ask. So, get your questions in the comments. There's no harassing here. There's no bullying. What's up, JP? Great to see you again. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. This is not a debate show or a show where everybody yells at each other. I know there's a lot of popular shows that do that, but this is not that show. What's up, D. Scott? Yeah, Kristi Noem is gone. Who'da thunk it? You know, I guess political pressure really is a thing, guys. I guess the work is working. So yeah, Primal Blood says, "What do you think about farms? I'm for them. That's where we get our food from." Thank you for your question, Primal Blood. Welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, so this is the place where you can ask all your questions and no one's going to make fun of you for not knowing things. Israel Franco says, "What do you think of her replacement?" Kind of a mixed bag, actually. His name is like Mark Wayne Millen or Mullen. And yeah, he denies the 22 election, but he had some other things where I'm like, maybe he'll be a little less shitty. I mean, what we're essentially talking about here is a person that is going to do whatever Donald Trump tells him to do, no matter what. Like, he's not going to nominate somebody who doesn't fit into those categories. So, Primal Blood says, "What's your political belief? Are you a leftist?" Yes, I am a progressive Democrat. Primal Blood. Welcome to the party. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no harassing. There's no bullying. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. There's a lot of misinformation and propaganda running around rampant out there on these propaganda machines that we're strapped into 24/7. So, this is the show where you can ask questions about what's really going on and we can have a better understanding of what's happening in our country and our government. And hopefully, we can get back to sort of a shared reality. Because how are we supposed to solve problems if we can't even agree on what's actually going on? Period says, "Did Tallarico have a real shot at winning Texas, or is it a Beto situation all over again?" I do think that he has a real shot of winning Texas. There are gains that get locked in when we build campaigns in states that are generally not friendly to Democratic candidates. And so everybody that you convince to vote for Beto in 2018 is, potentially still living in Texas. And as, people are moving from states that they can no longer afford to states that are a little bit cheaper on the surface, it's possible that there are people in Texas that are, now interested in voting for Democrats. As with everything in American electoral politics, it's not just a matter of who should win, but it's a matter of is there going to be massive voter suppression? Is the Trump administration going to do shady shit to try to suppress the vote or lie, cheat, and steal their way to more electoral victories? So there's definitely work that needs to be done in Texas for that to happen. But I think things are looking good, and I like Tallarico a lot. I think he's very appealing to Democratic curious voters in Texas. Cam says, "Could be worse. You could be here." I guarantee you that everybody in America wishes they are wherever you are, Cam. What's up, Triska? Great to see you again. Period says, "What happened in Dallas was really shady." Are you referring to issues with election machines? Are you referring to the change of the rules? Because I'm not 100% sure what chicanery happened in Texas. It is a very heavily voter suppressed state, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was just kind of like, all part of the same soup. CS says, "Did you hear Kristi Noem is getting demoted?" I heard she was getting replaced. I did not hear what role she was going to be moved to. What's up, Julie Vigor? The Cam says, "The UK, nah, mate, it's getting bad over here." Well, I guarantee you do not have a fascist in government right now, the way that we have a fascist in government right now. Israel Franco says, "Why don't the Dems focus on getting Lindsey Graham out?" I don't know. I don't know what his popularity looks like. I don't know if there's any candidates in, where is he? Kentucky? I can't remember if it's Kentucky or not. That Lindsey Graham is in. Is he Tennessee? I don't remember. Mia says free Palestine question mark. Yes. Tracy Facey says if you're seriously thinking voting makes any difference, you are probably triple jabbed. Man, there's a lot in that sentence that makes me want to boot you, Tracy Facey. But instead, I'll put you in question jail. If you do not ask a question with your next comment, you are going to get booted. But yeah, voting 100% makes a difference. There are people alive today because people voted for Democrats, and there are people who are dead today because people voted for Republicans. Tracy Facey says, fine, boot me. Your wish is my command. See you later, Tracy. Cam says, we should worry about the future. It's going to be so brief. I don't know what your vibe is, Cam, but yeah, I don't like you're making all these vague complaints. Like, what do you actually believe? Like, what is going on over there? Mateo says, can we see under the desk? There's nothing to see here, just my pajamas. Mia says, free Palestine. Yeah, agree there. Julie Vigor says, in the UK, we love Trump. Can you please send him to the UK? Julie, I fucking wish we could send him to you guys, but I guarantee you do not want him. Unless you guys want your, costs to go up and your economy to drag to a halt. Matador says, are the rich the problem? Yes. James Rush says, I wonder what Trump has promised Lindsey Graham. He's out in the streets. Big mouth. Lindsey Graham is a political animal. And when he thought it was more valuable to work with Barack Obama on his agenda, he made a lot of overtures to Obama to say, oh yeah, I'm down with the bipartisanship. But then as soon as it became not politically, popular for him to do that, he switched to being a full obstructionist Republican. When he thought it was politically valuable to go after Trump, he did that, but then he switched to being pro-Trump, and he's been there ever since. Period. Do you like me calling you Period, or do you have a name that you'd prefer I call you by? Period says they extended voting hours because there was confusion on where people could vote, but the TSC disallowed it. I don't know what the TSC is. Yeah, do you think that the Republican Party was doing something shady in Dallas? Period. Let me know, and let me know if you want me to keep calling you Period. Chris says, are we at war with Iran or not till boots are on the ground? There are probably lawyers who are smarter than me who will give you a better technical definition of when it counts as a war. I think it counts as a war because that is how everybody in the Trump administration is describing it. Jacob says, who's your favorite president ever? I definitely don't have one. Dan Boy says, Abraham Lincoln was the only good president. I think there have been lots of good presidents. Cam says, what's the public opinion over there at the minute, the majority, as in how they see Trump? He has the most unpopular president at this point in their history. I believe he's the most unpopular president of all time. Could be wrong about that, but that's generally, you don't usually see disapproval numbers this high at this point in somebody's administration. Josh says, the future is forever. It's the present that's so brief. Wow. Snaps, buddy. JP says, no draft, please. My grandfather was a 4 eyes snitch. You want volunteers only. Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Want to hear more about that, JP? Shell Shot You says, as citizens, are we going to get him out or sit on our hands? We're going to get him out. Shells, are you doing the work? Are you part of the coalition? Are you recruiting other people to do the work? Julie, you're out of here. You did not ask a question. Dan says, are you Team Iran or Team USA? I think that both countries have perfectly reasonable citizens and both countries have perfectly terrible governments. All right. Alura says, okay, real question. Which politicians do you think would be part of an a cappella group? I don't know if you mean that as a pejorative or not. Cam says, over here, you're made to believe that everyone loves Trumps to the high heavens. Well, that is inaccurate, Cam. Jeffrey Shelton says, I am worried about the midterms. Why are you worried about it? Are you worried that Trump's going to do some shit? Have you called your local representatives and asked them if they have contingency plans for everything that you are worried that Trump might do? Dan says, equally terrible governments? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we right now we have masked federal agents that are just kidnapping and murdering people and sexually assaulting people left and right. So yeah, equally terrible governments. Riley says, are you Team Israel or Team USA? Again, I believe that the citizens of both countries are perfectly great, and I believe that the governments of both countries are perfectly terrible. BioX says, you are not my dad. That is not what your mom says. Ivan Cisco says, I'm sure you know about Kristi Noem. I did hear about Kristi Noem. Oscar says, what's your opinion on anarchism? I have not seen a a model where I believe that anarchism could work. Shellshot U says, do you believe he'll be the last president? He's trying to be a dictator. He's going to try, but I don't believe that he will be successful. JP says, you are my uncle. That gets me right here, guys, every single time. JP says, a volunteer soldier signed up to fight. They have your back. Draftees are just folks off the street. Most are bystanders. I mean, that seems like a perfectly reasonable argument to me, JP. BioX Krieg says, disrespectful. Well, you know, I respond to the energy that I am given. Matador says, is North Korea actually a horrible country like they tell us in the West? It's a horrible country in the sense that the government is highly kleptocratic and dictatorial. So everybody that's not in the party is starving. There's no freedom of speech. You kind of have to go along. It's like The Handmaid's Tale. Just like everywhere you go, you have to like be shouting the praises of Kim Jong-un, and if you're not praising hard enough, then you can get sent to a work camp or some shit like that. So yeah, it's pretty bad over there, unless you're like in the government, in which case, you know, you're probably living the life. All right, Cam says, I've heard it's getting really expensive over there in certain states. It 100% is. Geraldine Thomas says, Pam Bondi is changing the rules for attorneys for protection against prosecution. I need to read more about that, but that sounds pretty shady. CCF says, labor is in shambles. They're making Welsh people's taxes pay for a rail that goes 5 minutes into Wales. I find that left-wing parties tend to be judged way too harshly, CCF, so I don't know. I hope that your hating labor is not making you vote Tory or Reform, because you should definitely still be voting for a left-wing party. Dean Goldberry says, how low does my testosterone have to be before I start voting Democrat? You know, there's a lot of very high testosterone people who vote Democrats, Dean Goldberry, and you're looking at one of them. Geraldine Thomas says, is it true? Is what true? Is what true? Cam says, I'm just curious, don't mind me. No, you're good, Cam. Aurora says, do you think that the American political spectrum is a prime example of the Overton window? I think that we have definitely seen the Overton window being moved in the last couple of decades of American politics, where things were, you know, acceptable, were unacceptable back then, are now acceptable. Let's see here. CC says, no, I'm voting Liberal Democrats in the general election. Is that a different party in the UK? I thought it was just the Greens and Labour were the left-wing party. Dan says, are you pro-Sharia law or no? No, I believe in a separation of church and state. Joe Padilla, great to see you again. Dan says it's not close to know what that means. Dean Hall says, was Kristi Noem really fired? So she is no longer going to be the head of DHS. I don't know if she's going to be moved to a different position or not, but there's going to be a different guy who's going to be nominated for that, named Markwayne Millen. So yeah, Kristi Noem is no longer the head of DHS. Dan says, liberal Dems are like center-right. Are you talking about UK politics, or are you talking about American politics? Muzz King, Joe Padilla, and Aaron Gregory, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Let's see here. Dan says, Labor is more socialist. Okay, so there's the Liberal Democrat Party, the Labor Party, the Green Party. Aaron Gregory says Markwayne Millen sucks too. Yeah, but potentially he'll suck less. I don't know. Let's see here. If you're asking Jarrett that question, you don't know what Sharia law is. Cam says there's Reform UK, Restore UK, Conservatives on the right, and Labour, Greens, Liberal Democrats on the left. Yeah, so long as you're voting for a left-wing party that can win, I think that you're doing a good job over there. But yeah, just an idea that I want to put. I've been getting a lot of viewers from the UK recently, and just a thought to put into your head if you are watching from the UK, that because of billionaire-funded propaganda, there are a bunch of narratives that we have bought over here, hook, line, and sinker, that makes it seem like the Democratic Party is worse than it actually is, and the Republican Party is better than it actually is. And I worry that there are similar things happening in the UK. And so I would just encourage everybody to take a step back and kind of do your own research on that, because it is pretty wild what they are getting away with over here. Joe Padilla and D. Scott, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Chance says, are you familiar with Andrew Bustamante? I do not know who Andrew Bustamante is, so sorry about that. All right. Let's see here. CCF says Plaid Cymru is best decision for the Welsh election, though. I don't know anything about that. Alrighty, let's see here. Bit Nevo says there's reports that Israel fired missiles at other Gulf nations and blamed Iran. Wow, that is interesting. I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that reporting, but that would be absolutely fucking bananas if that was the case. Fog of War, great to see you again. Says, do you think the GOP is going to get slaughtered in the midterms because of Iran? Failing any sort of massive voter suppression or other lying and cheating that Republicans and Trump will attempt, I think it's going to be a massive blue wave. But again, we have to be really vigilant about this. We have to make it too big to rig because the Trump administration and the Republican Party are shameless in the ways in which they will try to lie, cheat, and steal their way into electoral victories. Dan says the IRGC literally claimed to striking Dubai, bro. Quit spreading fake news. I did not say it was accurate. I was just reading one of my comments here. Chance says, I guess to be more broad, any thoughts on all the former CIA, FBI spec ops talking heads? I don't really. I think I know what you're talking about. And yeah, I think we just have to be kind of like aware that there's no confirming what some people say on the internet. So just remember to double check everything that you hear. Don't take anything as gospel if you're hearing it on the internet, etc. Cam says, do the Democrats have a strong leader now, or are they still a bit laxy-daisy? I don't believe that there is a person or group that is kind of like transcendent in the Democratic Party. We got a deep bench of really great candidates. Leadership is still pretty centrist, and everybody's kind of pissed off about that, myself included. But it kind of makes sense if you look at how diverse the political party is, the Democratic Party, and how wildly varied running for political office in different states and cities can be. So I personally believe it's kind of a bad move for our Democratic leadership to be acting the way they are, but I also understand it. Like some people want to claim that is evidence that they are like bought and paid for, or that they're a bunch of weenies. And I'm like, well, I don't think you really understand the environment that the Democratic Party has been existing in for the past 50 years if you cannot see a logical reason for the way that they are behaving. That is not just them being a bunch of corporate shills. Alrighty. John Abbott says South Dakota better hide its puppies. Yeah, you got no idea what she's going to be up to now that she's so upset. What's up, yeah, baby? Yeah, baby says, I heard about the Israel shooting and blaming Iran. I think they mentioned that the shot at Dubai. I don't know anything about that. I have not been able to confirm or deny if that is a real thing. Baby says, will you sign up to do a comedy show for the troops? I would 100% do a USO show. I've just never been asked. Nobody, because I'm not really famous, so nobody really gives a shit about me doing anything like that. Israel Franco says, do you think McConnell is voting or someone is voting for him? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of super old people in government that it is likely that they are voting via proxies. I don't know how legal that is. I don't know if that's a regular thing or not a regular thing, but yeah. Yeah, we have to worry about that. We have to worry about how old our politicians are and do something about it. Vote for better, younger people, Fogwar Productions says we have to make Jarrett famous more than just a niche internet micro celebrity. From your lips to God's ears, Fogwar Productions. Uncle T-Bone says, what's the over-under on how many pardons are issued by Trump by the time he leaves office? I think 10K. I mean, it depends on how many people bribe him. If you buy enough of his crypto coin, you can fucking shoot a cop in the face and Trump will pardon you. Cam says, what does Israel do for America? Why is America so pro-Israel? So there's a bunch of different motivations, Cam, for politicians supporting Israel, and it ranges from just being worried about AIPAC making you lose your reelection, or all the way to religious extremists who believe in supporting Israel to bring about the rapture. Like it really does run the gamut. I think there's the most substantive and I think probably the most universal reason why politicians still support Israel is because it is a very strategic place for us to be able to launch military operations from, being in the Middle East and all. WT Fitz, D. Scott, Muzz King, Aaron Gregory, thank you so much for helping reach my third gift goal of the day. You know what that means, guys? It means it is finger hearts o'clock, the best time of the day. Finger hearts o'clock. And every time I go in to do finger clots, they move it further and further Further and further down the list. What the fuck? Why are you doing this to me, guys? All right, let's see here. Cam Can says, cheers for answering my questions, lad. Have a good night. You too, my guy. It's Day over here. Awesome Sauce says, no one was not fired, sadly. She just moved jobs. Trump knows firing her lets her spill dirt on him. Do you know what job she's going to be moved to? Awesome Sauce, let me know. BitNevo says, the locals report that the missiles came from the ocean, but Iran is in the mountains. Again, BitNevo, we got to be really careful. There's way too much misinformation out there. So I'll definitely check it out and see if there's any substance there. But until we know, we should not assume. Let's see here. Okay. Dan says, supporting a democracy in an undemocratic region. I don't know what that is in reference to. BitNuva says, right, I agree. Just spreading the news always validates. Yes. Dan says, IRGC attack, claiming an attack people on TikTok. It was Israel, bro. Dan, what are you doing, man? Like, you want to be part of the conversation? You're just here to spread misinformation. Just let me know. You're in question jail, Dan. If you don't ask questions, you're going to get booted. Richard Chapman and Aaron Gregory, thank you so much for helping me reach my first Finger Hearts goal of the day. Dan asked, what misinformation? I'll let you know when I see it. Ren Z says, is the political compass correct? I don't know what that question means. Narcissus says, why don't social democrats criticize the authoritarian left more openly? I believe that the Democratic Party is a big tent, and so we should be welcoming of everybody who wants to be a part of it. Even if I disagree with some things that you believe or do, politics is about addition and not subtraction. So we need to be welcoming people into our coalition. So if you're a centrist, if you are somebody who prefers Chuck Schumer to an AOC, I am not going to yell at you. All right, Dan, again, stop. I don't care. Ask questions or you're out of here. Okay, DJ says, thoughts on Netanyahu and Modi? I think Netanyahu's a piece of shit. He's a war criminal. Modi, I know a little bit less about, but he does seem very right-wing to me and authoritarian, so 2 thumbs down on that dude, generally. GMZ Deals says, I support Trump, but absolutely can't stand MAGA. How can we support Trump, GMZ Deals? I am obviously somebody on the left, so... we're probably going to find some things we're probably going to disagree with each other on a bunch of things, but I just want to make sure that you know that you're welcome here. Dan says, just helping clear up misinformation and lies being spread in the chat, but okay. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. DJ says, did you support Kamala? I did support Kamala. Mon says, you think 1% uses laws to extract money from people? Yes, I do, Mon. Pamela says, is it true that Trump asked Zelensky for assistance with allowance of airspace? I haven't seen that reporting, Pamela. It tracks, though. Sack says, well, I think everyone can agree peace through strength, I suppose, but I don't think that starting a expensive and stupid and irresponsible war counts as peace through strength. Alex G says, do you believe government-owned grocery stores will set prices and lower costs? I think that it has the potential to do that. If you look at private grocery stores, the profit margins are razor thin. So it's not like they are sort of like artificially inflating costs so that they can pad their pockets. I believe that the real utility of government-run grocery stores is not in undercutting the costs of other grocery stores, but in making sure that food deserts in poor neighborhoods have other options besides like bodegas and 7-Elevens where they can buy their fruits and vegetables and shit like that. DJ says, thoughts on ICE? ICE is a rogue agency. They are masked feds who are disappearing people and murdering people and sexually assaulting people. So yeah, I am not for them. I am against them. Full stop. Don Gordo Cabeza says, how does one support Trump and not the cult he created and promotes? You know, the political spectrum of America is really diverse and weird. Don Gordo, I talk to people who are Trump supporters, but they prefer J.D. Vance. I've talked to people who are Bernie supporters, but they voted for Trump in every election. So yeah, I completely get it. If somebody's like, I like Trump, but I hate MAGA, it just makes, the world is weird, takes all kinds, etc., etc. All right, Sack Attack Zach says, do you have evidence of these claims, though? What claims? Goldilocks says, do you know the Bears? I do know the Bears. Dale Day says, Israel and Iran should have nukes, mutually assured destruction, deterrent policy, MAD. I don't really believe in mutually assured destruction. I think we should have fewer nuclear weapons as opposed to more. Dale. Yeah, baby says, who or which country do you think will profit the most from this war with Iran? My guess is that America keeps on shooting itself in the foot, and the nation that is the most poised to take advantage of that is China. I understand that there are going to be some issues with getting resources out of Iran that China might have wanted to use. I think the net effect is going to be that China fucking dominates the globe for the next 50 or 100 years or something. Dale Day says MAGA is not one unified thing, it's a coalition of groups. Yeah, generally speaking, I think you're probably right about that. Alrighty, let's see here. Richard Chapman says, do you think Trump and MAGA are one and the same? Generally speaking. Don Gordo Cabeza says, isn't MAGA his platform and his product? How can they be separated? Again, it just depends on each individual person, I think. Toon says, do you know about UK political parties? I know a little bit, but not a ton. D Scott says, oh, hey, Firefly called it. What's that? What is that in reference to, D Scott? Trying to think about the TV show Firefly? Something about that? Yeah, I don't know. Helen says, what's the argument about? What argument? I don't know. Zack Attack says, where are the evidence on the claims you had for ICE, though? Zack Attack, so I'm going to say this as nicely as I can possibly muster. I was a real dick yesterday on the live stream. All my regulars know. So I'm not trying to cast aspersions here, Zack Attack, but if you are not aware of the fact that ICE has been acting illegally and grotesquely, then I worry about where you get your news. If you would like me to send you information on that, shoot me a DM and I will happily send that to you, but I can't like recite the URL of like news articles or anything. I can give you things to Google if you want. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what people are asking for when they ask me for evidence during these live streams. Like I could just recite things, but I can't like bring up articles and show them to you. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Kaizen D says, opinion on Greater Israel. I don't know what Greater Israel means, Kaizen D. D, 1961, great to see you again. Wouldn't you agree that the strongest nation's people among us do not need to show off their strength? Soft power, the role of diplomacy, 100%. Speak softly and carry a big stick. I'm with you 100% on there, D. John Abbott says, something about coordinating defense of the Western Hemisphere, so violent imperialism. Looks like Trump created a new position for Noam, special envoy to the Shields of America. My guess is that she's going to be working to coalesce other right-wing authoritarian governments around the globe so they can all work together to be pieces of shit together. She's probably going to be working with Russia on hacking voting machines and shit like that. Excuse me. Vlog Sauce says, isn't Netanyahu international criminal? Why can't someone go arrest him? Is international law enforceable at all? It is if he goes to a nation that recognizes the authority of the International Criminal Court, but sometimes those nations believe that it is too politically irresponsible to enforce those laws. So even if he does go to a country where he should be thrown in jail, he sometimes does not get thrown in jail. Vez Politics says, are you a Zionist? It depends on what you mean by the word Zionist, Vez. If Zionist means that the innocent civilians who are currently living in Israel get to stay there, then I'm a Zionist. If Zionist means that Israel is allowed to take over all the surrounding territory, then I am not a Zionist. Carmine says, where's Abbott when you need him? CS says, how many nations recognize the authority of the International Criminal Court? That is an excellent question that I do not know off the top of my head, but I'll look it up for you if you like, CS. Send me a DM. Dylan says, Israel first or America first? I am for the citizens of both of those countries. I am against the government of both of those countries. Zack Attack says, there are ICE officers who do bad, but the agency investigates them as well. That is inaccurate, Zack Attack. The agency is covering for ICE right now, as is the Republican-controlled federal government. So, no, it is not accurate to say that the ICE has a few bad apples. ICE is rotten to the very fucking core. ICE and CPB have been hiring people without any kind of like background checks. They have been not giving them nearly enough training and basically giving them a gun, giving them a face mask and saying, fucking go crazy. Dan says, Trump wants to send in National Guard for the midterms to scare voters away. He probably wants to do that, but it is not a given that he will get away with that, Dan. It is up to us to make sure that he does not succeed in that quest. Little Willie Man says, just looking at our political climate now, do you think America will have a blue majority? I think that all things being equal, they should, but Trump and the Republican Party are shameless in their voter suppression and vote theft tactics. And so we have to make sure that we are vigilant in stopping them and being in touch with our local representatives to make sure that they have contingency plans for all the things that Trump could possibly do and the Republicans could possibly do to try to either suppress the vote or cheat their way into electoral victories in 26 and 28. CS says the Senate will be a hard win. Do you agree? I think getting easier by the day, CS. But yeah, the math is always hard on the Senate map because the Senate map is weighted in favor of the Republican Party. Donal says, just based on the women that you like to hook up with, would I be left or right leaning? You're never gonna believe this, Donal, but you can like diverse women and still be a right wing piece of shit. Like Mitch McConnell's got an Asian wife, but that doesn't mean that he's woke, All right, so I would guess that it has a lot more to do with your politics than who you want, what flavor you prefer to get it wet. All right. Joe Geronimo says, release the Epstein files in its original version, arrest Trump and everyone on the Epstein list. Completely agree with that. Joe Geronimo. Okay. Dan says, only like 40 countries recognize the ICC. The ICJ is recognized by nearly all countries, though, including Israel. Oh, I am unfamiliar with the difference between the ICC and the ICJ. Okay. Dylan Fisher says, what can the people do to get mass deportations instead of what we are getting? Dylan, I don't know what counts as mass deportations, but what I want is for just the worst of the worst to get deported. And if that is such a large number that it counts as mass deportations, then sure. The issue is mass deportations for mass deportation's sake. That's what we're seeing right now, where Stephen Miller is telling ICE and CPB that they have to arrest this many number of people every day. Civil rights and due process be damned. That is a fucking issue. Like, that is the problem. And in my opinion, a reason why we should never be voting for Republicans ever again, because they are letting this happen. It is their policy. They're letting this happen. Everybody that you know that's a brown person that has been illegally detained or sexually assaulted or just anybody that's been murdered by ICE, it's their fault. That is why this is happening. Dan says, how about you ask me a question about politics? No, thank you. Rian Crawford says, isn't being too involved mentally in politics and everything as the average person? I mean, if you read the news, it is very easy to get depressed and anxious. And so I always recommend people combine being informed and being involved with politics with a significant and appropriate amount of self-care. And that is one area in which I 100% do the thing that I prescribe to other people. I have a very healthy self-care regimen for all the times that I am not actively engaging in politics or doing these live streams. Mon says, do detainees count as population for political representation? Ooh, that's a really good question. I actually have no idea. Zack Attack says, can you give us citations on the evidence? Not off the top of my head, Zack Attack, but if you send me a DM, I will send you anything that you ask for. Here's the thing about this, Zack Attack, and to everybody else who is curious. I always say, if you want evidence of the things that I'm saying being accurate on this live stream, send me a DM and I will send it to you. And it's not just because I don't have the citations memorized, but it is also a test to see if you actually give a shit or if you are just here to try to say that accurate things are not accurate. Alrighty, Gustav says, opinion on Danish politics? I don't know anything about Danish politics, so sorry about that. Jared Tabor says, name 3 things you like that Trump has done. No. Apple user, a whole bunch of numbers, says, ask me anything about politics and I will give you my left-wing opinion. I'm not a biased person, Apple user. I know you're trying to paint me as one, but I'm not. We the People says, both sides of politics are complicit in covering up corruption. What does it say about the voters who blindly supports either sides? That is a really good question, We the People, but I think that the devil's in the detail. I would say that there are politicians who are complicit in covering up corruption on both sides, but there's a big difference. Because right now the Republican Party is in charge of the government, and there are way more of them covering up corruption and engaging in corruption than there are Democrats who are covering up corruption and engaged in corruption. The platform of the Republican Party is pro-corruption. Like, they have been running a pro-corruption campaign. They are the ones who are allowing corruption to happen at unprecedented levels under the Trump administration. So advocating for better politicians over worse politicians is not blindly supporting one side over the other. It is recognizing that one party is better and worse is worse. Excellent question, though. Jared Tabor says, not biased, got it. Thank you, Jared. Somebody whose emoji I can't really see what it is says, you think Native Americans got a good deal via their land reservations plus money relative to other colonies? I'm not really sure. I think if you look at the net between the relationship between Native Americans and the colonizers, it seems obviously that it's a massive net loss for the Native American population. Does allowing them to have casinos and make a ton of money off of that make up for like the Trail of Tears and 100 years of genocide? I don't think so. Dixon Yass says Democrats are the example of corruption. That is inaccurate, Dixon Yass. Ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Alrighty, let's get back over into these comments over here. Han Fixer Keblin says, I always end up with lefty women. I can tell by their penis. What a silly thing to say, Han. Ask a question or I'm going to have one of my mods boot you on Twitch. Misty Lane, good to see you. Says, I know you support democracy, but is it a good idea to ally with a democracy that changes every 4 years? I think it is. I just think that the swings are so drastic over the past couple of years and inorganically drastic. Like what we're looking at is a very successful campaign by right-wing authoritarian billionaires. It normally isn't like this. Like it was a lot more of a stable transition between like Reagan and Bush and Clinton than it is between just like Obama and Trump and Biden and Trump, Okay. Proto Zero says, why do left hate me for saying we should waste money funding Ukraine, but the right hate me for saying we shouldn't waste money for funding Israel, but both agree we shouldn't waste money fighting Iran? Proto Zero, that's a really interesting question, but I would say that the left does not hate you for saying that we shouldn't waste money funding Ukraine. I think that there are probably people who just disagree with you about whether or not it is a waste to support Ukraine. Like, I disagree that it's a waste that we support Ukraine. Thomas Clark says, Trump is making the Gaza Strip great again by building a luxury resort for the upper classes. Is that sarcasm, Thomas? Reese Saled says, left or right wing? Left wing. Paul Walker says, hi, I'm a center-left liberal Democrat like Bill Clinton. What do you think of my ideology? I don't support that, Paul Walker, but I support your right to have that opinion and be a Democrat. I am just happy that you are on the team. Politics is about addition and not subtraction, so you are a welcome Democratic voter. And I would love the opportunity to push you further to the left and make you a progressive like me. Ivan Cisco says, can you elaborate on Pam Bondi oversight meeting? I thought she already testified. Ivan, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to, but if you send me a DM, I will happily look into it. Devern Flo says, do you think Democratic leadership will ever move away from centrists like Schumer and Jeffries? Yes, if we vote in enough progressives to actually change leadership. Right now, what we are looking at is a growing progressive caucus within elected Democratic politics. And the more progressives that we get to win their primaries and general elections, the more power that the progressive wing has. The power that the centrist wing has is that, number one, there's still more centrist Democrats elected to government than none. But number two, centrists do appeal to the more purple districts and states. There are exceptions, of course, like there are progressives that win in red districts and stuff like that. But if you look at the net, there are tons of races where progressives would not even fucking get close to winning an election. So, yeah, we need to be part of the movement to get more progressives elected so that the Democratic Party can start moving away from what I consider to be a dead and failing ideology. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, Sunshine Wildflower says, vote for younger candidates will likely help. I completely agree with that. CS says, what are your thoughts on Plattner? Is he a neo-Nazi? I doubt very strongly that Graham Plattner really has any right-wing authoritarian neo-Nazi views. I fully buy his apology, but I am not and as a Jewish person, I feel I am entitled to buy his apology. But I'm also not a voter in Maine, so it kind of doesn't really matter what I believe about him. Matthew C says, Kristi Noem fired? ? No, she just moved to a different position. Dixon Yas says Democrats shouldn't be in office ever. Completely disagree with that, Dixon. Didn't I put you in question jail, Dixon? I'm pretty sure I did. So you're out of here. Lauren, great to see you again. Drake Cervantes says CBS is reporting Trump just fired Kristi Noem. Is there any truth to this? He didn't necessarily fire her. He just moved her to a different position. Okay, Zacatech says because the state of Illinois imposed 29 new taxes under Democratic leadership. I don't know what the tax structure of Illinois is, but because it's a blue state, I'm guessing that's a progressive tax structure, meaning that rich people pay more than poor people, which I support. Zacatech. All right, let's get back over here. Misty Lane says, why do people think when we give money to Ukraine, they have a responsibility to tell us how they use the money when America mismanages its own money? Also, how much responsibility does Ukraine have to even report on that? I'm not really sure what the arrangement is between America and Ukraine as far as reporting what they use our stuff for. It is valuable, though, to continue to support them because they are helping us to, take power away from an aggressive and antagonistic Russian government. Proto Zero says, do you think it's fair to say that while some degree of illegal immigrant labor is good for us, but too much is not good for us? I'm not saying we are doing it. It is good, but having too much is not good for us or even them. Immigrants are a net positive in our country. So I don't know where the upper limit is of, oh no, we have too many immigrants now. But generally speaking, immigrants are a net positive. There are issues that need to be addressed if there are, for example, like a massive rush of immigrants, like during the Biden administration. If you live on the border and you don't like it when people are sneaking across your backyard in the middle of the night, obviously that's a problem that we need to address. But immigrants are a net positive on the country. John Selfridge, great to see you. Also, what do I think about Noam being replaced with Mullen? I don't know for certain. I've been wrong about this shit before. He seems a little less cuckoo bananas than her. I wish she was out of government entirely instead of just being moved to a different position. Average Joe, great to see you again. Isn't comparing Ukraine to Israel a false equivalency? One is being invaded by an aggressor, and the other one bombs schools and calls it self-defense. I completely agree with that, Average Joe, 100%. Curious One says, please explain to MAGAs the benefits they enjoy due to Democrats, such as FMLA, etc. Generally speaking, if you live in a red state, you are enjoying the benefits of tax money from blue states. Sergio Valencia says, America first or Israel first? I am for the citizens of both of those countries, and I'm against the governments of both of those countries. Reselet 10 says, left-wing tend to be narrow-minded narcissists, more open thought on the right. Left forces ideology. That is wildly inaccurate. Reese Saled, you're in question jail. If the next thing you say is not a question, I'm going to boot you. Zack Attack, that's not a question for me. Flamingo Mo says, I've been to Oklahoma and didn't meet a single person who wasn't cuckoo bananas. I've met a lot of nice people in Oklahoma. Alrighty. Proto Zero says, do you think that given that the grassroots funded Justice Democrats abandoned their obstructionist strategy to push Medicare for all to vote with party lines, is it then fair to say electoral politics is a lost cause? No, I don't really agree with anything that you just said there, Proto Zero. I have no idea what you're talking about, that they abandoned their obstructionist strategy to push Medicare for all to vote with party lines. Like what is going on here, man? Like, I don't understand how Justice Democrats have violated their trust. Like, they're doing the work. They are the progressive wing. Like, it seems like maybe you're being a little too harsh, and potentially you need to extend a little bit of trust and empathy to the people that you supposedly agree with politically. Clifford says, can we talk in private? Question mark. Sure, send me a DM. Flamingo Mo says, you must not have met my MAGA Oklahoma in-laws then. How's your wife feeling? She's done being pregnant. We still have a little under 2 months left. Don Juan says, blue states do better because of immigrants and nobody talks about it, only Democrats. I generally pretty agree with that, Don Juan. Right, Jackson says, do you think Israel struck Dubai and framed Iran? I have no idea. I've heard that that's being reported, but I do not know if it is accurate at all. John Bradley says, what do you think about the Joint Denial of Sexual Harassment Transparency Act in the House? I have not read up on that, John Bradley, but my guess is that probably happened around party lines. I'm guessing that Republicans voted against it and Democrats voted for it, for the transparency meaning. Alrighty, Curious One says, Democrats want more rights for more people and Republicans take away rights. That is accurate, Curious One. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Lauren says blue states do better across the board, not just because of immigrants, but because they're absolutely a net positive. Yeah, blue states generally have a progressive tax structure, meaning that the rich pay more and the poor pay less, which means that we have better healthcare outcomes, better education outcomes, better funding for cultural stuff like that. Period. Again, do you care if I keep calling you period, or do you have a name you want me to call you by? Asks, is Israel a net negative or positive for the U.S.? I think it's a net negative for the U.S. John Bradley says both sides denied. Only got 67 out of 435 in favor. Disgusting from both sides. Interesting. I need to read more about that, John Bradley. Alrighty, scrolling up. Misty Lane says, do you think alt-right wingers realize that when they start making Israel about Jewish people, they are working on behalf of Israel? Because like Israel is like, our enemies are all anti-Semites. Then you go and say you're an anti-Semite, you're validating them. Generally speaking, I think that the government of Israel currently is weaponizing claims of anti-Semitism in order to silence their critics and shit like that. So yeah, I generally agree with that. Zack Attack says we can't kill millionaires and billionaires with loads of taxes. Zack Attack, taxing millionaires and billionaires would not kill them. I don't know if you saw, but Zack Attack says they'll all leave and we lose profits. That is inaccurate, Zack Attack. That is a narrative that the billionaire class has put forward so that we do not tax them. But we have taxed them before, and everything was better when they were, Zack Attack. Ask me more about that, because this is one of my favorite topics. I know a lot about this. I would love for you to check out Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna have proposed a new wealth tax that would mean that Elon Musk would be like a 50 billionaire as opposed to a 500 billionaire. And so I think he'd be fine with $50 billion. I think he'd be fine. Hanukkah says, why is your name Jarrett and not Jared? Because that's not what my mom named me. Curious One says, only 2% increase in billionaires would not break them. Completely agree with that. Mia's LV Adventure says, thanks for talking to this guy. I appreciate you being here, Mia, and thank you for the support. Fog War Production says, I really do think blue and red states can and do help each other. You just never hear about it. You know, Fog War Productions, I believe that as a position of faith, but it would be difficult for me to argue that red states help blue states, maybe in the fact that so much of our farmland is there, like they feed us and we give them our tax dollars, you know. But other than that, is there another way that you see that argument happening? I'm open to it. Let me know. Thomas Clark says you're 100% correct on everything you've said. Thank you, Thomas Clark. I appreciate that. All right. Back over to Twitch and YouTube. Proto Zero says, do you agree with using tax funder money to pay for illegal immigrants to stay in hotels while our own homeless never got that benefit? No, I do not agree with that, Proto Zero. I believe that we should use taxpayer money to make sure that everybody has a place to live, whether you are a homeless person who is a citizen or a homeless person who is an undocumented immigrant. It is cheaper for us to pay for housing than to just leave people on the streets and then have to pay for their medical care at emergency rooms. All right, user a bunch of numbers says, what was World War I fought over? It's pretty complicated, but Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated, which caused two countries to declare war against each other, and then that triggered a whole bunch of alliances who were then tasked with declaring war on the guy that they said that they would declare war with you if you ever declare war in a country, and then, you know, it all kind of spiraled out of control from there. Okay, Italiana says, is Miss Gnome out? She is no longer the director of Homeland Security, but she does still have a job in the Trump administration, unfortunately. Righty, Misty Lane says, we had higher taxes post-World War II. People really think we got rich because of World War II. No, it's because we taxed rich people back then. That's part of it, Misty Lane, but it was also partially because we were the only game in town. Like, all the manufacturing that used to come out of Europe was decimated. And so if you needed things, America was the only game in town. And so we were just supplying the world with everything. And so, you know, we made just like fucking crazy amounts of bank over there. User a bunch of numbers says, who is the director now? I don't know so there's a guy named Markwayne Mullin, who's a senator from, I want to say Oklahoma. He is going to be nominated for that position. I believe there has to be a hearing and a vote to confirm him. He may get to be interim director in the meantime, or they might have to assign somebody else to be interim director. I'm not sure about that. Shrimp says, what is the accumulation of the sensation in the fermentation? I don't know. JP says, World War I was about many countries thinking they had unstoppable war machines. Sounds about right. Brick says, what's wrong with the orange? So many things. Thomas Clark says, does the United States help support Israel's universal health care? Yes, it does. Don Juan, thank you. I appreciate that. Tell your friends. Scrolling up. Alex says, why does Iran hate Israel and America so much for so long? I think that there are some reasons that are baked into an extremist religious theocratic regime, Alex. But then there are other reasons that are much more substantive, where Israel and America have, violated Iran's sovereignty. They have meddled in their elections in order to extract resources. And those wounds have cut deep. And so that plus the religious extremism, I think, has propagandized a bunch of citizens in Iran against America and Israel. Again, some of that hate is completely justified, but I just don't believe in that kind of hate. It's not productive. I don't think that we should hate I don't think we should hate the citizens in Iran. I don't think they should hate us. Scrolling down, Logan Sleet says, who's winning the World Cup? I have no idea. Joe Bunzy says, Oklahoma here. Mark Wayne Mullen is terrible. I know he's terrible, Joe Bunzy. I just don't know if he's going to be as terrible. Ready. David Douglas says, isn't Mullen the senator to try to pick a fight with the head of the Teamsters Union? I believe that is accurate, David Douglas. I did a quick Wikipedia-ing of him, and that does track. Richard Chapman says, do you believe that rebuilding Ukraine will boost America's economy? I think it definitely can, depending on how it's done, Richard Chapman. Alex says, why does the Islamic Republic of Iran... Already did that one. Tony Robbie says, did they release the Epstein files yet? They released a bunch, but they redacted a whole bunch of it illegally. They kept a bunch of it out that had Trump's name in it illegally. There's a lot of information that has left to be released, Tony. So if you are as upset about that as I am, then you should vote for Democrats over Republicans, because Republicans are currently in charge of the entire fucking government, and they are the ones who are blocking that information from coming out. All right, back over to Twitch. Misty Lane says, why do right-wingers set up false dichotomy and then are like owned stupid leftists? You know the reason why, Misty Lane. It's a debate tactic. It is trying to get us to fight as opposed to engaging on the substance. Instead of actually building connections and learning and growing and changing minds, it is just straw manning and getting us to fight amongst ourselves. But you knew that. You knew that. Missy Lane says, America punches Iran in the face for 60 years, and then they're like, why does Iran hate us? Exactly. David Douglas says, they've been removing files as we speak. That's right. They released a bunch, and then they unreleased them. How about that? User a whole bunch of numbers says, Cathedral of Learning built in 1930. Look it up. Why can't we build buildings like it anymore? I don't know. Alrighty. All right. Questions have kind of calmed down. D, 1961 says, possible downside, GOP senator / Trump supporter as new DHS leader. Upside, one less GOP in the Senate. Yeah, that's a point. Here's the thing. Trump feeling political pressure to switch who is in charge of DHS means that the work is working. Because Donald Trump did not want to get rid of Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem was doing the things that he wanted her to do. But he felt it was politically damaging to keep her in that position. So he had to remove her. And that is good news. That means that the work is working, guys. James Rush says, so what do you think about Trump crying about Spain? Just another self-own. Congratulations, we played ourselves yet again. Oh, you're not going to let us fly our illegal military operations from your base? Well, in that case, all the American small businesses are not going to be able to sell to your country anymore. How do you like about that? People are going to go broke faster, and all our prices are going to go up faster. That'll show you the country of Spain. Israel Franco says, if the government gives so much money to undocumented, why don't they prosecute the people doing it or fix it? Because the government does not give so much money to undocumented people, Israel Franco. That is a right-wing propaganda narrative. All right, Shork says, it is significant that Trump is afraid to easily endorse the Texas primary. That is also a good sign as well. Misty Lane says, are you doing any nighttime streams soon? I don't have any plans to, but there has been a call for me to live stream political speeches as they happen. So if there are any notable speeches, I may schedule something so that I can do sort of like a live commentary on it. Alrighty. Excellent questions, everybody. Excellent question. David Douglas says, I wonder if Corey Lewandowski will go with Nome or stay at DHS. I mean, who's gonna comfort her when she is on those long taxpayer-funded private jet flights all around the country? Oliver Vale says, politics is so difficult. It is in some ways, Oliver, and in some ways it is not. Triskafon says, when are you on your mini tour? It is possible that I'm doing a short mini tour with Steve in Europe starting in late July, but that's a maybe depending on how the birth of my child goes. But I'm definitely doing a tour with Steve in starting in late November, and that'll be the West Coast and a little bit into the Arizona, New Mexico area. Antifa Barbie says, Noam got demoted today. No more mile high for her. Maybe. Curious One says, when's the due date? May 2nd. Jacob says, what do you think of World War III? I'm against it. James Russ says she saved the American taxpayers money. Yeah, probably because they're doing it raw. She's like, I'm not charging you guys for condoms. Right. Allie says Colorado, please. I don't know if Colorado is on the list. I can look it up for you because comments have kind of slowed down a little bit, so I could actually look it up for you if you like. Israel Franco says, isn't Christie living in government property? If so, does she get kicked out? I'm actually not really sure what the rules are on that, but it is true that she is wasting even more taxpayer dollars by living on government property instead. Uncle Kevlar says, Brian McGinnis, thoughts? That name sounds really familiar, but I'm not 100% sure who that is. So sorry. Sorry for tomorrow. Great to see you again. All right, let's see here if I can look up my tentative tour schedule and see if anything has been switched. Yeah, Lauren, I want to come to Philly too, but Steve, the Marine who broke his arm is Brian McGinnis. Brian McGinnis is the guy who got his arm broke, not the guy who did the arm breaking, right, Uncle Kevlar? Because, yeah, that Marine was fucking dope as hell, and whoever broke his arm, fucking go to jail. Fucking straight to jail, my guy. Carmine says, how is it tentative? I saw it on Facebook, so it must be true. Where Steve's dates are concerned, there is always a little bit of flexibility because sometimes there are unforeseen, complications. So yeah, let's see here. As of last year, I'm doing San Francisco, Sacramento, San Jose, Fresno, Los Angeles, Santa Ana, San Diego, Las Vegas, Tucson, Phoenix, and Albuquerque. So sorry, no Colorado. So sorry. All right. But yeah, I wonder if he's put them on the website yet. Maybe that'll change things. We'll have to look that up at some points. Okay, Proto Zero says, I'm not right wing, but it's ironic you say you hate false dichotomy when creating them. Do you think that I'm doing that, Proto Zero, or are you talking to somebody else in the chat? Let me know. Ready. Let's see here. Missy Lane says, do you think Trump should fire Pete Hegseth next? Yes. Ready. John Abbott says, how hard do you crash out when watching political speeches? It's difficult for me, but that will probably be really enjoyable for you guys if I'm being real. I just tweaked my neck a little bit. Okay. All right. Proto says that was for Misty Lane. If you hate illegal immigrants getting hired, why not punish the people who are hiring them? Yeah, I don't know if that was a false dichotomy, Proto Zero. Yeah, do you think, Proto Zero, do you think it would be better if we punished people that hire illegal immigrants, or do you think it would be better for us to punish undocumented immigrants who get jobs over Americans? Let's see here. Sorry for tomorrow says, I'm glad to see the people around me have started moving to the left of things. Love to see it. Scrolling up. Hey, Lauren, petition Steve. Tell him to put Jarrett on more East Coast shows so you can come to them. The Fixer Mike says one of the people pulling Brian McGinnis was U.S. Senator Tom Sheehy. Fuck U.S. Senator Tom Sheehy. Fuck him. Fuck him. Support the troops, do ya? Senator Tim Sheehy, you fucking broke one's arm, my guy. Alrighty. Scrolling down. Nitzia Olmo says Senator Tim Sheehy broke the Marine Corps veteran's arm. Yeah, fuck him. Fuck him forever. Let's see here. Proto Zero says you think both. You think it would be good to punish both of them, Proto Zero. Okay. Well, how do you feel then that for the past, I don't know how long, we have only been punishing the undocumented immigrants and not punishing the people that are hiring them? Let me know what you think about that, Proto Zero. To some degree, we have to dissuade both parties involved from swallowing up job markets. That being said, most jobs will be fucked because of AI. Proto Zero, it's interesting. There's a lot. The job market right now is fucking terrible, and people are assuming that is because of AI, but a lot of the data is suggesting that it's not. A lot of the data is suggesting that it's because of things like Trump's stupid tariff war and not funding healthcare and actually kicking undocumented out. Kicking undocumented people out has been hurting the job markets in ways that feel, it feels unintuitive that would happen, but that's what a lot of the data is suggesting. Let me know what you think about that, Proto Zero. Average Joe says, what jobs are immigrants taking from Americans? I think that people, this is true, Average Joe, that most people believe that that's the case, but that is actually not the case. Alrighty, Sorry for Tomorrow says, people I knew who were very right-leaning a couple years ago were discussing their support for the LGBTQ. Love to hear it. Right. Curious One says, will Stephen Miller have any influence if Trump is removed or passes away? I do not believe that Stephen Miller has any juice in the Trump administration except for via Trump. And if I'm going to guess, if I had to guess, I would guess that he has probably burned a lot of bridges trying to fucking throw his weight around, considering that he is our shadow president right now. So yeah, if Trump leaves, I do not imagine that Stephen Miller has a career after that. But I could be wrong about that. You never know how far people like J.D. Vance have fallen, Alrighty. There's a comment that I really wanted to... Mel says, hey, Jared, hope as well. No, Mel, Mullen is in. Your thoughts? It's good that this happened because it is evidence that the work is working. Trump would not have done this if it was not for political pressure put on him to do this. I don't know if Mullins is going to be better. I think if he is, it'll probably just be like a little bit better. Like maybe he's a little bit less cuckoo bananas than Kristi Noem. Maybe he's a little bit less of a piece of shit. But Trump is not going to put anybody in that position who is not already agreed to do whatever the fuck he tells them to do. Gibbo says, which UK political party do you support? I'm a left-wing guy, so I would go Green or Labour. Sorry for Tomorrow says, also, support for James Tallarico was brought up at the table, which a few years ago they would have voted all R. Love to hear it. Sorry for Tomorrow. Zap says, what the fuck are you talking about? None of these people have fallen, and they're all in charge. I don't know what you mean by that, Zap. Israel Franco says, when politicians are having debates, how would you make the media fact-check them on the spot? I think that we 100% should have live fact-checking of debates. I think that we should not allow candidates to sort of like filibuster the moderators. I think that they should be able to turn off their microphones if they're saying some bullshit. Like if you say something that is obviously untrue, like when Donald Trump was like, they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats, then I think that he should have had his mic cut off so that everybody could be like, that was a lie. What he just said was a lie. He's not allowed to say lies. Ace Boxing says, thoughts on the big scary orange man? I'm against him. Gibbo says, no, Greens want to legalize cannabis that bad. They want open borders. All right, Gibbo, I don't know. I'm not in the UK, so it doesn't really matter what I think. Mon says, you think most arguing points are to prevent unity? I don't think that most arguing points are to prevent unity. I do think that there are individual actors who argue in a way that is specifically designed against unity. But just discussing disagreements and just discussing certain issues, I do not believe is intrinsically about preventing unity. What's up, Sleepy Babe Kitten? Carmine, what if they're cycling through sycophants to pull aggro from each other? To pull aggro from each other? I don't know what that means. Name Me Mochi says, and if you are in office and lie to the American people, you should be fired immediately. I think that's a little dicey because there's small lies and big lies, you know? Sphinx Egyptian, great to see you again. Says, thoughts on Senator Sheehy helping to break the Marine's arm on live TV? He should be fired. He should be fucking thrown in jail. Man, fucking a fucking Marine that is protesting against an illegal war that is costing us lives and billions of dollars. Unfucking believable, man. Unfucking believable. Yeah. All right, let's get in here. Misty Lane says, use AI to fact check debates. No, Misty Lane, because we do not know what those fucking AI is gonna do, you know, like, especially depending on who's in charge of that AI. I do not want Grok moderating debates, you know. Alrighty, let's see here. All right, Proto asks, do you think that bringing in many illegal laborers while driving prices for us lower often wedges them against each other and is exploitive? I definitely think that there are people that hire undocumented workers who exploit the fact that they are there illegally to pay them under minimum wage. But that's not their fault. And yeah, you know, I think that we need to regulate that. I think that we need to make sure that we're punishing those companies instead of punishing those laborers. Oh, Ralph says, who should you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballots. Raymond Velez says, fighting over imaginary lines, aka the border. Yeah, I don't like that. Alrighty. Sleepy Babe Kitten says, every day such an embarrassment, no lies detected. Kimberlina says, impressive the Marine didn't even wish. Yeah, fucking oorah, man. All right, everybody, things are slowing down a little bit, so we are going to get to our outro. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you do not have to. I know that we are all struggling in the cost of living crisis, but if you have the means and you have the desire, the mechanisms are there. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits and emotes on Twitch. I actually just put a bunch of new emotes up, which I hope that you guys are taking advantage of and enjoying. Let's see here. You can become a super fan on TikTok, and you can become a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch for free. Helps me out a ton, costs you $0. Special thanks to my regular financial contributors, Robert Shannon, Carmine, Patrick, Melissa, the two Seans, Dan Blackroyd, Pliff, Triska Muzzking, and It's the Rocketeer. If there are any questions that I was not able to answer on this live stream, do not be shy about reaching out. I want to be a resource for y'all. I want to be a resource for you to be more involved and more informed about politics. So do not hesitate to reach out if there's any way that I can help you in that project. You can shoot me a DM. DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is in the bio. Use me and abuse me. Use me until you use me up. And I love the Discord also because there's great recommendations there for books and podcasts and also great organizations that need your help. And 100% you should be donating your money and time to those organizations. If you're somebody like me and you see what's going on and you want to do something to help, vote Save America, run for something, Indivisible, Swing Left. Like, they need your bodies. And there are a million different ways to help. If you want to knock on doors, if you want to answer phones, if you want to file, there are a million ways to help. So do something, guys. That's the only way that we get out of this, is if we all do the work. And the more people that do the work, the less work that we will each individually have to do. All right. Sorry for tomorrow. Says I'm considering running for office in my area. You should. Check out Run for Something. They got a lot of great resources there. Lauren says, if Mullen is Noam's replacement, will his seat be up for grabs ASAP? Do Dems have a chance in Oklahoma? Some states, if a senator leaves their position before their term is up, the governor replaces them. But I believe that is a state-to-state thing. We would have to look that up. I accept you calling me Professor, Sphinx Egyptian. Thomas Clark says, Tallarico have a chance to win in Texas. He 100% does. He has a better chance if people like you and me help him out, Thomas Clark. Sweeterino says, magic button changed the way the two-party system. Do you press it? Replaced with what? Just ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting. Sphinx Egyptian says, politics today feels so much like the 19th century again. It feels so volatile like it did then. Do you remember from experience, Sphinx Egyptian? Fog War Production says, why do we never talk about cooperation between red and blue states on stuff like trade? I don't know what to say about it, Fog of War. You let me know, my guy. Jude says, what's your take on UK politics at the moment, if you know about it? My knowledge of UK politics is very, very marginal, June. But here's what I say. I think that people in the UK suffer from a similar disease to what we have here in America, of people judging left-wing parties way too harshly and forgiving right-wing parties for fucking anything that they do. Here in America, Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. And I suspect it looks like, it feels like there's a similar dynamic in the UK where right-wing parties can never be bad enough and left-wing parties can never be good enough. So yeah, I'm just trying to spread that gospel as far and wide as I can. Alrighty, let's see. Anything interesting over here? Ooh, I like this idea. D says, fact check live debates. Penalty for verified lie. 30 seconds transferred to opponents. Microphone / screen time. Thoughts? I fucking love that. D, I fucking love that to hell. Yeah, man, let's fucking do it. Proto Zero, just I see that you're engaging with the other people on the live stream, and I'm totally happy about that happening. You are welcome here, and I hope that you become a regular. I hope you join the Discord. I would love the chance to convince you that left-wing politics is better than right-wing politics. Henry says, thoughts on Israel? I'm for the citizens. I'm against the government. Buddy Love 99 says, what's your POV on Noam departing? It's good news because it shows that political pressure is working on the Trump administration. We cannot count on Markwayne Mullin being better than Noam. We can hope, but we can't count on it because Trump's not going to put anybody in that position that hasn't already pre-agreed to just do whatever the fuck he tells them to do. And I wish that Noam was leaving entirely instead of just being transferred to a different department. Ooh, Kimberlina says, anybody hear rumors about Netanyahu being gone? I haven't heard anything about that, Kimberlina, but from your lips to God's ears, my guy. Fog of War Productions says, I just think it would be better if we saw each other as working partners rather than bitter rivals. Completely fucking agree with that, Fog of War Productions. Like, you know, not to pat myself on the back too hard, but that's what I'm trying to do here. And I haven't broken it down as far as like blue states and red states working together so much as the voters working together. But yeah, that's you know, you fucking hit me. I can't think of the right colloquialism for how I feel about what you just said, but you nailed how I feel exactly, Fog of War Productions. So however you want to, whatever colloquialism or country slang you want to use for that, that's how I feel. But god damn, yeah, that one went right into my fucking veins, man. Fucking inject that shit right into me. Falling Box says, what are the implications of Bondi being subpoenaed? Will she ignore it like others have? It's important that these steps get followed, even if we are looking down the barrel of a Republican Party that's not going to enforce them, a right-wing Supreme Court that's not going to enforce them, or a hostile actor who is going to obfuscate and delay and try to get out of it. So long as those you know, sort of like steps are still being taken, we will know where the failure points are. We'll know where we need to replace people. And right now, the big flashing red sign above all of our fucking heads is Republicans need to be replaced by Democrats. And I know it is not a cool thing to do to suggest that Democrats would be better than Republicans in those positions, but factually, it is the case. Democrats will be better. Alrighty. Proto Zero says, I don't go by left or right. I take issue as my own opinion. That's totally fair, Proto Zero. But I do believe that there is a foundational base for left-wing politics. And I would love to find out if we agree on some of those things, you know? Lauren is protesting in D.C. this weekend. So everybody else go protest in D.C. as well. Super Mario says she didn't even know the Fourth Amendment. That tracks. Israel Franco says, will Dems prosecute when in office? Your thoughts? I do believe that that is the case. I do believe that any Democrats taking over the government in 26 and 28 will know that that is a priority. There will be a return to a rules-based order, so it might not happen as fast and furious as we want it to, but it will be a priority. And so hopefully new leadership at the Department of Justice, new leadership at the FBI, new leadership in Congress will mean that we start seeing some legal accountability for all of the crimes that have been committed. Cephalon says, people celebrating Gnome being removed don't realize who the replacement is. Yeah, you know, but it's still better. It's still better that we see some effect of political pressure, Cephalon. Spaniard says, do you think we have a chance of a Senate majority in the midterms? Yes, 100%. But we need to be vigilant because the Republican Party and Trump are shameless in doing illegal shit to win elections. Haribo says, wait, is this USA politics? Yes, it is. Falling Box says, I agree that we need to go through the process, even if it's ignored. Patel and Bondi should be gone. Completely agree with that. Alex Lopez says, what is your view of the leader of Germany in the 1940s? I'm against him. Righty. Nitzia Olmo says, did you have a gender reveal? No, we did not. Haribo says, where do you stand? I'm a left-wing person. Progressive Democrats. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much again for being here and for all of your support, both the free and the paid kind. If we make it to high bears, then I do Karis Nemec's manifesto from Andor. So, you know, we didn't get there today, but we got there yesterday. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I don't know if there really is motivation for more gifts, but I thought it'd be a fun thing to do. So yeah, be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great Thursday, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And over on Twitch, we're going to try to, to raid a channel. Let's see if I can find somebody good to raid. I don't endorse this person. I don't know who they are, but they're talking about politics, so I'm going to go ahead and raid you guys over to there. So see you later on the YouTube and the Twitch as well, everybody. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care.